can you tell us kind of what does it include, social media for the legal space?
Well, I'm a simpleton, so.
Give her the.
Oh, I can be simpleton louder. Yeah, I think at its most basic level, it's networking, but it's online, and it's conversational, it's educational, it's the same thing that you would do if you're, frankly, at a cocktail party or at a gathering like this, and it just happens online.
Okay, so Alan, can you tell us what it's not?
Well, specifically to the legal space, it's not very sexy, right? It's in our industry, it's very word-driven, it's very service-driven, and that's hard to put into a visual medium. So it's not two of those things. It's also, I'm not sure if this is not, but like, it's very challenging to use it as a channel for strong client acquisition. I think it reinforces, I think it helps, but again, with the legal industry, specifically for law firms, there's always this kind of risk of solicitation if you're too aggressive on social media. So it's not always the best channel for direct client acquisition, I should say that, but it is, in fact, a great channel for client acquisition overall.
So Jen or Adrian, do you have anything to add?
I would say that as our corporate law firm, the majority of how we use social media is to back up any, as a client might come and know about our firm, they might know about our attorneys, and they go and look at our social media components to confirm the decision of calling us. It's where we've had the most luck, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I just want to start by saying I wasn't told I was allowed to wear jeans tonight, so I feel like that's just kind of a little bit unfair. But what I want to say though about
so
social
you're never
media,
coming back?
No, it's fine. I should realize that Seattle's kind of a little different, But I want to say though that I think that the way I think of social media is, I think it's the wrong way to look at it. Is this an acquisition tool? Is this the direct way you bring in business? I really think social media can be the most powerful when it's an extension of the lawyer's self, when it's a way for them to reach out and connect in an authentic way with more people, and it's a powerful way for them to educate their marketplace, while they're sleeping, right? They can only bill by the hour, can only bill 1 hour for every hour they work, but social media allows them to amplify what they're doing. And I think that's what makes it so unique from any other form of marketing.
Okay, so Alan, can you tell us a little bit about how you see that it's different for lawyers, social media being different for lawyers than some of the other tech spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for lawyers, much like I was saying, there's always this fear of solicitation, right? So, announcing you just won $1 million case, or workers' comp attorney might announce, hey, we just got a $150,000 judgment for somebody. Who's next, right? Solicitation maybe, so that's a little different. As we're Coca-Cola or some other industry, like drink our Coke now, right? Like it's hot, the weather's out. They can set up an algorithm to like auto tweet, things like that. If you're a DUI attorney, like we were having a conversation earlier, we were talking about releasing press releases on an attorney's blog about DUI locations or something like that. You could do that, but you just can't say, if you have a DUI, call me, right? So there are those kind of slight differences. But outside of that, I don't think it's much different in that the challenges are the same. Building an audience is the same challenge that anybody has in different verticals. Yeah.
Jen, can you comment from your time with CVS?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? So with CVS, or any retail company, right? Like, give stuff away. Buy this, get this. Come in the store, you get this. And with law firms, we can't do that, right? We can't say, come visit us and we're going to give you this hour free, or purchase this handbook and we will give you 2 hours for the price of 1. So I think traditionally, I think a lot of times on social media, it's about getting a deal, and our attorneys do not like to give deals. So,
so is someone going to tweet that out? Davis Wright tweet.
No, please do not do that. They won't let me do this again if you do that.
Okay, Lee, did you have anything to talk about social media from your time before Avvo, or at Avvo, as far as it being different?
Well, at Avvo, obviously Avvo participates in social media, and so we have some of the same, we have to think about things kind of the same way that lawyers do. And And the way that we approach it is we first of all think of it as an extension of the content marketing that we're already doing. So we have a blog, we have various blogs, and we will use social media to communicate out valuable or interesting or engaging content that's on our blog. And so for stuff that we have on consumers, that's directed at consumers or social media, we will try and take timely things that are happening in the news and put a little bit of a Avo twist on it. Our brand tenets are fearless, human, and honest, and so we think about that and we try and put that in everything that we do, but still have it be helpful, educational, practical, and engaging at the same time. And sometimes we're successful and sometimes we fail at that.
Okay. And I'm not saying the name of your company again because clearly I've been mispronouncing it. So we're moving right along.
You're not alone.
So sorry. So Adrian's going to outline kind of the 3 biggest ethical stumbling blocks for lawyers.
All right, there's actually going to be CLE for this next 5 minutes.
There's forms in the back. So, hey, Patrick.
Neither those .03 credits.
That's right. You know, sometimes you just gotta get over the top right down here. Anyway, all right. So for years, ethics has been kind of the red herring that keeps lawyers from using social media. Like, oh no, we don't want to use social media. What about all of that? You know, like this ethical boogeyman. Like we're going to say something and get disbarred. But the truth is, there are really just 3 things to be worried about when it comes to ethics. And the first one, and Will Hornsby, kind of the ABA ethics guru, he says this is the one that's the most common, and that is inadvertently revealing your client's identity, okay? And we do that so easily on our bio, right? We say, I work for the largest energy company in the state. You didn't say the name, but you really did reveal who they were, okay? So that's the one, everyone just be on the lookout. Now, on the other hand, if you have permission from your client to reveal their identity, in New York State it has to be written permission, then obviously you have nothing to worry about there. But really, I mean, you've got to, you got to mess up pretty bad to give away the identity of a secret relationship you have with your client, right? I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to mess that one up, right? Not mess that one up. Anyway, okay, so the second one is solicitation. And solicitation is the most misquoted one in terms of what we can and can't do. So what is solicitation when we're on Twitter, for example? If someone jumps on Twitter and they say, I just got ran over by a Coca-Cola truck and I broke my leg, right? You can't, as a lawyer, respond and say, you need a lawyer, I'm just the guy for you, right? You can't do that, that's solicitation. However, if someone comes on Twitter and they say, I just broke my leg, is there anyone that can give me legal advice, right? Now they are soliciting, they're requesting legal help, and you may respond to those people, okay? Now, is it ever solicitation if you are sharing information that could be helpful to people, right? So if you're sharing information, that's not solicitation. Although, if someone says, I just broke my leg, I got hit by a Coca-Cola truck, and you show them with an article that says, if you've got hit by a Coca-Cola truck, you should hire me, right? Like that would be, anyway, you get what I'm saying. But you've got to be intentional to solicit someone. The other thing, I know some people here are personal injury lawyers, and the solicitation rules, they were really designed to keep you from soliciting, indigent clients, right? So I'm not trying to, hate on you for that, but I do want to make it clear that corporate lawyers, there's almost never been a single case of someone being censored for soliciting in a corporate setting, right? Because it's assumed that a CEO of a large company is intelligent enough to tell a lawyer to just get lost if they're soliciting to you, okay? That the laws weren't created to protect, intelligent, successful people. And also, you can also solicit as much as you want to other lawyers, right? That's a carve out. They don't get the protection of the solicitation rules, okay? So go at it. But let me just add, the biggest reason we don't solicit is not because it's unethical, but because it's ineffective, right? If you go to a total stranger and say, you should hire me to be your lawyer, that's not really a great way to start building a relationship. Okay, so solicitation, I know you guys are thinking there's 3. Hopefully he gets done with this so we can talk about more interesting things. Okay, the third thing is inadvertently creating an attorney-client relationship, right? We all heard about this in law school. So if someone comes on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter to a group, right, and they say, I have this crazy thing that just happened to me, what should I do? And publicly, on the page, you say, oh, I know what your problem is, you need to do X, Y, and Z, right? they may infer that you've decided to represent them as their lawyer, okay? You've just accidentally and inadvertently created an attorney-client relationship. So don't do that. Instead, send them a private message and say, why don't we have a phone call so that I can run a conflicts check and charge you for my advice, because that's what I do for a living. So anyway, so those are the three. Is that helpful? Useful?
I just have a question.
Okay.
So if somebody says, I've been hit by a Coca-Cola truck and everything,
Yes.
so you can't go on Twitter and say, hey, I can help you, but can you private message them and say, or is that?
What do you guys
soliciting?
think? What do you guys think?
No, it's in-person solicitation.
That's right. Whether it's private or public, you can. You just are less likely to be caught if you say
That's what I was thinking. Not a practicing attorney.
Right.
By the
But that makes no
way.
difference, right? We're being ethical
Yeah,
regardless
no,
of
I just
our-
I want to be clear about what the rule, and also you talked about something that's in New York where you have to get written permission. Is that
Yeah.
the same in Washington?
Yeah, and I don't know.
No?
In most
It's not
states,
required, but it's a good idea.
yeah, in most states, if you have a public relationship, like there's public filings that have you as the counsel for them, you can say it. But for tactical reasons or tact reasons, you don't want to piss off a client. So you don't want a big, announcement about, hey, I represent this firm, because then you might not represent them.
A lot of times it's in the engagement letter
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. I mean, especially with
Rules.
with Fortune 500 companies, there's one massive firm that they do almost all the legal work for a certain company in Palo Alto that makes computers with fruit on them, and everybody knows what firm does all the work, but they're not allowed to say.
I would add one other potential issue, which is UPL, possibly. So I've been seeing a lot more traction on Quora. So you have a Pennsylvania licensed attorney that's answering questions of a California-based consumer or something like that, right? So that could potentially be UPL. And I've seen that more and more happening on Quora specifically, or Reddit, is another channel where I'm seeing that more and
And
more.
you see that they always make a disclaimer, like,
Yeah,
I don't know anything
right.
about it, but here's my advice.
But
and
yeah,
tell me exactly what to
exactly,
do,
right. So, clearly, I would add that as kind of the fourth potential kind of ethical concern.
I like that.
Okay, Lee and Jen, do you have anything to add? No? You're good? Okay. All right, so now we're gonna talk about things that don't work. So what are the biggest mistakes that you all see, you can go in any order you like, that you see lawyers making with social media? Not necessarily ethical.
Sure, I think taking something like a client newsletter or some long form of marketing material and then putting that directly unchanged onto, Facebook or LinkedIn even, like where it's just, you're not gonna scroll for 4 pages to read it because you're on your phone, and having them try and distill it down. I think that's the biggest thing that we see.
Kind of makes you wonder why we create those newsletters, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've turned all of ours into blogs,
Good.
and then it works a lot better than hiring people to do all of the infographics for it. I mean, those, it turns out great, and it still gives them the comfort of putting a lot of words on a page, but we're marketing it differently.
Remember, so my pet peeve would be, remember when in the early days of LinkedIn, all the lawyer profiles had the picture sideways? Right? Like, it was just like the shadow sideways, like not knowing how to edit your photo and uploading that to like LinkedIn was kind of like a big fail. And it seemed to be more common with
the best I can
attorneys
do.
for some
I gotta
reason.
get back to
Yeah,
work.
That's a big one. So get that fixed right off the bat. The other one I see is like just attorneys regurgitating information, right? Like just like, oh, this is a cool article. Here, cut and paste, and I'm done. This is my social media activity, right? So you're directing traffic to somebody else's website. You're not even really curating, at that point, right? Like you're just regurgitating. So even if you're going to share other information, other content that you didn't produce, then you should try to strive to be a channel that curates that content, right? And that content should be of interest to your audience, and it should be very relevant, right? And so people are happy to read other people's content, but it should, again, be curated, right? That's why they're going to use you as a resource.
I think mine would be, you gotta kind of know yourself and pick the channel that is natural to you. So I think there's a tendency, and this isn't unique to lawyers, I gotta be everywhere. So I gotta tweet, I gotta go on Facebook. Now there's this Google Plus thing. I don't know what the heck that is. And I have a study that indicates that lawyers spend something like 1.7 hours a week on social media. You can't be everywhere, and so don't try. Better to not be on Twitter than to be anemic on Twitter. So, and I am anemic on Twitter, so I can say it from personal experience. So you can follow me on Twitter and you'll get 1 tweet a year. So don't do that. So I think it's, you don't have to be everywhere. Pick the thing that's right for you. So, and that can, for some people, it's Twitter, it's rapid response. That's Kevin O'Keefe. That guy, more tweeting than I could, yes, he's back there. Tweeting, probably.
I've only tweeted once since I was here.
That's shocking. That's way below your average. So if you're somebody like that, me, tweet, you can't do it. Other people, you're looking at a blog and it's like white page fear and you just can't get it out, so then don't do it. So find the one that's right for you.
Cool. All right, so by far, more than any challenge lawyers have on social media is just a complete and total lack of engagement or participation, okay? So, if you look at the bell curve, it's like 90% of them share less than once or twice a year. They just don't do anything, okay? Now, if someone shares once a month or twice a month, it's so infrequent to almost not even be effective. So, I guess, so when I tell you what not to do, nothing, don't do that. Anyway. No, so, but the other thing I see, so on the other extreme, is then we have people that are sharing, 10, 20 times a day. So those are the people that I call like the ruiners. They ruin it for everyone else. Because every time, everyone has one of those, that guy, right, in their network that shares all the time. And that makes the 90% of lawyers think, I don't want to be that guy, so I'm just gonna never share, and I'll never have that problem. So I think it's finding the right balance, being out there in a very visible way. And then I guess the other thing is, I guess I'm trying to think of what are the things we don't want them to do. And that's just kind of hard because to make mistakes online, you have to participate online. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that lawyers make, and this is gonna sound weird, but they don't take enough chances. And I'm not talking about real risks. I'm talking about you've got to play the game over and over again to find out what's working and what's not. And a lot of you have startups, and so we talk about agile software development and how you learn from each iteration. Well, social media is the same way. Every time you share, every time you write a blog post and put it out there, you learn from your analytics, you learn what's working and what's not. And in my first year of using social media, I learned most of what I know now about social media because everything I did, I was learning from, and I was seeing the analytics. And the lawyers that don't put stuff out there frequently enough, they're never going to get any better, and they're never going to get any traction.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to add, we have for Evolve Law, we had this spirited debate about having a newsletter. And I said, I'm not going to have any part of it. My company, Tracklight, has a newsletter that's very short. Anyways, I was overruled because we have Good to Be Social, who does our social, and Jules, and so now we're going to have a newsletter, so be prepared, you might get one. I think my pet peeve is when people are using things like, and I'll just use Hootsuite, they're just tweets and they just go out. Like I started noticing for Evolve Law, tweets are going out, it's like, oh, I wrote the blog that came out this week. So they just go out and they go, here's the blog, some tagline from it, and then my Twitter handle. It's like, okay, but what about all the people that it was talking about a Boston event? What about all the people? So it takes that extra time because you can't just use an automated system. It's not really going to be authentic. That's just, I don't know. I'm not a social media expert. I'm just the moderator, so I should probably add in.
No, I mean, but that's a great point. We need to have, our DNA has got to be part of all of the communications that go out there because nobody wants to interact with automation. They want to interact with, with the people that are behind it.
So how many hours does it take to get an effective ROI on social media? Like, how many hours does it take per week in order to be able to give that level of
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to hear everyone else's advice on this as well, but what I personally think is that if you can spend an hour each week writing blogs or some content, and then another hour during the week sharing and being engaged, I think that's the minimum that you're going to see results from. And most of the lawyers that I see long term that have brought in hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in business through their blogging, they spend hours every week. I mean, they don't spend twice as much time. They spend 10 times as much time as the people that don't get results. So, I mean, it's kind of the bad news is there's not a super easy way to make this really work. You got to put in a lot of work, but if you put in the work, you can get the payoff from it as long as your strategy is sound. So that's my opinion on that. I'm just curious what you guys think.
Come back to me.
Yeah. So I think you should consider social media like part of your business development efforts, right? So if you're already spending like 2 hours a week, like 1 hour here at this meetup, for instance, networking with other people to try to generate like some referral base. Online is kind of no different. For me, we take it to another level, right? So for us, social media is a way to generate traffic to our website, and then we remarket. We do all kinds of advertising stuff. So we recapture a lot of that stuff. So social media might be 25% contribution to an overall ROI that we get from various marketing services, right? And so that's how we measure that kind of effectiveness. If you click on a blog, so we can target attorneys through LinkedIn, for instance. We post a blog that might be of interest to attorneys. We can sponsor that based on job titles, geographic region, all that sort of thing. And we'll pay, right, to sponsor that, get that into your post feed. You click through it, right, some clickbait kind of title that draws you into our blog. You spend even just a couple seconds on there, you get hit with our tracking pixel. You go to Facebook, you go to Twitter, you're going to see our ads kind of following you around, re-inspiring you. So even if you weren't ready
Is that
to...
what it's called?
That's what it's called. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. It's effective.
Also, I use AdBlock. So it's
Yeah,
like, I would
a lot
like
of people do. Yeah. So, but what happens is when people are reading your blogs or your social media content, they're probably researching you, right? So maybe they're not ready to purchase, and so those remarketing ads or whatever, whatever your integrated marketing channel is, you're nurturing them at that point. And when they're ready to buy, you've been top of mind. And so that's when people click on those ads. So it's a little creepy. It's when you go to Amazon, you're looking at the Dyson vacuum or whatever, right? Like the animal, everything, sucks everything into the thing, right? The Dyson vacuum cleaner follows you around. You might not be ready to buy, but when you are, you type in cheapest Dyson deal or like Dyson coupon code, right? Stuff like that to get it off of Amazon, and that's when you're clicking on those ads. So that's how we kind of use it. We measured it as a percentage of ROI.
So I'll give kind of a couple of different examples that might get at your question. How many people in here know Karen Kohler? People know, yeah, you definitely do. So Karen Kohler is a personal injury attorney, and she has a blog called The Velvet Hammer. So she actually branded it and gave it a name. And she puts most of her social media time, so allocates a certain amount of time every week, and she really focuses on her blog. And on her blog, she gives practical advice, but she also talks about herself and her dogs and her interests and things like that. And it fits her brand, Velvet Hammer. And her goal with it is to have people kind of know her, get to know her, and decide if she's the right attorney for them or not before they come into her office. So she's not spending a ton of time every week to do it, and it comes very naturally to her, so it doesn't feel like work and an investment in trying to do it. Another attorney, Jason Beam, he's a DUI attorney in San Francisco. He focuses on YouTube. And there's YouTube videos of him riding his scooter around San Francisco, which I think is ironic, a DUI attorney. But and so he will film a few videos, so he makes sure his YouTube channel is very fresh. Again, he's not spending hours and hours a week to do it. So they picked the channel, again, that's right for them. And another thing I would think about is social media addresses your search results. And so Google picks up what you're doing on social media. And so I always kind of tell people, dress your house. So go search for your name, and your social media is going to be what shows up in a Google search result, and so it's how people will view you. So if you go search Karen Kohler, it's Velvet Hammer. And so think about it that way as well, that it's not just about the channel itself, but it's how you look in search. and what do you want to present. And so what Jason Bean wants to present is his videos that show him off, and they show up very high in Google search results for his name.
Great, I like that. Dress your house, I like
Dress
that.
your house.
If I was in the audience, I would be like
Tweeting that.
Sweet.
You know.
Dress your house.
Do you have anything to add on ROI?
I think that most of our attorneys that are successful are spending, I don't know, 3-4 hours a week on quite a bit of those pieces, but they also have the ability to have their associates help them, so oftentimes they'll have people drafting and then they're just putting their personal touch on it, and that's a benefit of working for a firm.
So it's the Britney Spears approach to social media.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not saying it's perfect, but that's kind of how it works.
It's a hybrid.
That's right.
So the question, that was a great question, thank you. I've added it for the next time we do this panel. So we touched on this a bit, but what are the lawyers that have the most success? You've given a couple of really good examples. Do we have some other specific examples where lawyers have done something that has brought them the success through social media?
We have a couple of attorneys that go to a lot of conferences, both because they're speaking, but also they just stay around and watch the other panelists or the other programs. And we have found that has been really great for them. They just tweet out, I mean, they're already there, they're listening, and so then they tweet out quotes or ideas that have happened, and that it's a really good way for them to just get their name out there. And it's that mix, right, between writing a whole post or putting it on their blog versus just getting those quick hits and dressing their house, right, getting it out there.
I think in a B2B experience, so say a larger law firm going after a more corporate type of client, it's holding yourself out as a subject matter authority and using social media to kind of as the distribution channel for that. I think for a consumer-facing law firm, it's transparency mostly. So we follow a San Diego immigration attorney, and half of his tweets are just like, it's a beautiful day in San Diego, downtown LA. You know, it's like he just kind of inspires people daily, and he has thousands and thousands of followers and likes, you know, on his Facebook page, that sort of thing. But he's just very transparent. He's a real person. And with consumers, when they have to dig into their pocket and pull out $5,000 or $2,500, whatever that retainer is for that issue, you know, they want to know that they can trust that person. They don't necessarily care about the law school, you know, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, you know, any of that sort of thing. They can't tell the difference between a well-written will or a poorly written will, right? Like, it's all about trust. So those attorneys that are very transparent on the consumer side do very well on social media.
Alec is the immigration attorney.
I'll give you his name later. I have to look it up. Yeah.
Not great marketing.
Yeah.
So I just remembered the biggest mistake from before, but it goes along with the best successes.
That's funny.
And that is the biggest mistake that's universal for lawyers is they're far too generic in the way they market themselves online. And they're so afraid, they're writing their bios like a contract lawyer. They include everything so as not to be excluded from any type of work, you know? And that makes sense for a contract, but that doesn't make sense for marketing strategy. So they've got to be specific, okay? But so here's where I've seen the real success. And this may seem obvious, but where you can see the best success with social media is in growing industries. So industries that are very mature, social media isn't effective. And it's not because all the people that are in those industries are too old for social media, it's because they already have their counsel. They already know who they use for their M&A work or for their, you know, for their well-established. But if you've got a new product or an innovative service and you see a growth opportunity, that's where social media is going to be the most effective. You know, one of my lawyers that I've worked with for years, he is the national expert on the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And he's had this blog, Computer Fraud, for years. And he gets cold calls because of his national reputation for the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. You know, if somebody needs, you know, he's had more, you know, he's had more successful, you know, I can't remember exactly what it is that he's usually getting. I'm forgetting the legal terminology, but he's done more of these cases successfully than anybody else, and he tells the stories, you know, every week in this blog. So anyway, find a growth industry. That's where social media is gonna work. Some lawyers though, they're just too lazy for that. They say, well, we're gonna make this more general so we have more people to write. And yeah, you'll have more content, but there's no opportunity in being.
About individual attorneys, we've had a lot of luck though as practices have come come together to do their social media. So we have a group that works on payment law, and it's probably one of the more successful blogs and social media campaigns that we have, because they are constantly, as a team, getting information out there quickly. They're pointing to client work, they're pointing to things that are happening in the industry, and I don't know how you guys feel about that, but at least from our standpoint, it works. It's not calling out one individual, but it's certainly talking about an area. And
How many of them participate? Like what percentage of the group?
sure, so it's kind of a small group. I'd say that there are 4 or 5 of them that are really active on it.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it works for them. I don't know that it could work for everyone, but at least in our case, we've had luck with that. And it shares the burden, right?
Yeah,
Of trying to get the
for sure.
information out.
I think like, so tying it specifically to a channel like LinkedIn, you could form a group, right? And so you can create a very specific audience of, you know, your desired kind of people, your desired client, and then collectively a practice group or a firm can contribute content on a regular basis to that.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about social media, and what's the best way to actually build your audience? You know, pretty sure a don't is buy Twitter followers, but I'll let the panel.
You stole mine.
Yeah, don't buy Twitter or Facebook followers. You know, you can go to Facebook Insights now, and you can see like the demographic information or geographic location. And so it'd be a real drag if you have 10,000 Facebook likes, and 9,999 of them are from like, you know, Southeast Asia or something like that, right? So clearly don't do that. I think be a resource is how I would say it at a high level. So know your audience, know the information that they want to hear. Because remember, to some degree, like Twitter is just kind of a bullhorn, right? So you're standing on some street corner shouting out information, and eventually people passing by will respond to that, maybe, if it's relevant, if it's right. So I would say that the easiest way is to find your niche and be a resource for your targeted audience.
Yeah, so the first book actually I wrote about social media was Social Media for Lawyers Twitter edition. And I talked about, you know, 2 really important things in building. Because the real challenge on Twitter, and how many of you are on Twitter? Does everyone, I mean, is this a group of Twitter users? I guess a lot of you are. I'm a big fan of Twitter. The problem is when you're starting on Twitter, you can have the most amazing content in the world, but if you don't have any followers, it's gonna take a long, long time to start gaining a following. So to get kind of a critical mass, you've got to follow to be followed. And I know it seems like, I guess it makes sense, right? But you've got to create a good profile that says exactly what you're going to talk about, exactly what you do, and start sharing, and then you've got to just start following people. Follow a few hundred people, and somewhere around 30 to 50% of them will follow you back if you're in the same industry, and that's how you can get started, get your first group of followers. Now, once you have that group, then you need to find some champions within that group, find other people that are also blogging and writing, and these people you can kind of team up with them and share each other's content. And now you have some kind of allies that are working together to help promote each other's content. And I mean, I know that's kind of a lot of work, and you have to actually talk to other people. But I thought that was really fun, a really fun part about kind of starting to build my following. And you know, and then once you have a critical mass, you know, and you get the flywheel going, then if you're just a great resource, people will reshare your stuff, and it makes it easier once you get going. But it is tough getting that first, especially on Twitter, getting that following going.
Yeah, follow those influencers and give them a shout, you know?
Yeah.
Share their content. Yeah.
Mary, can I lob in?
Of course, Dan.
So
So polite, that's permission.
It's coming on the heels of the Boston.
Here, what are you passing the mic?
So I just wanted to do with things. Events and hashtags were huge for me in like building a following. So I came across a couple of events that weren't even happening in the same physical place where I was, but I followed along and I lobbed in where I could, and I found that to be really powerful. And weirdly, like, the human connections that you make at different events can actually have an effect on your virtual world and vice versa, which doesn't intuit, but it's actually really the case. And then the second thing I would say, which I know, Lee, we've talked about this a lot, but I haven't heard you guys say this specifically, is engagement. I think that's another key to getting followers is a lot of people view what's happening here as a conversation. And so if someone says something interesting and you reply with something interesting, if they haven't followed you before, they may now, because now they see that, hey, you're listening and hey, you're involved in this. And a lot of ways that I got followers was I do that, and then the person that had shared the original message said, that's really interesting, I'd like to share that. So they would share that, and then other people would see that they were sharing my content. And I think if you view it as a conversation, as an engagement, I think that's really key too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, we were talking a little bit before this, that a lot of us were at reInvent Law in New York, and that was almost 2 years ago now. That's where I met Dan. Well, I took down the name of every person, every presenter. I went back, I found them all on Twitter, and I started following every single one of them. And I do that still. I just spoke at Clio's conference, and there's some people who, Joshua Lennon from Clio, if anyone knows him, I'll write him emails, and then I have to go and look at my phone because he'll start a conversation with me back and forth because he likes to use direct message on Twitter more than email. It's infuriating to me, but I know that's the way he works, and he is a huge Twitter person, and you're a pretty big Twitter person.
Well, one of the great things about Twitter, if you think about, if you're walking down the street and you go up to a total stranger and you walk up to them and you say, oh, hey, what do you do for a living, right? They're probably going to look at you like you're crazy, right? But when we're at this networking event, we approach each other as strangers, like, why are you here? What's this all about? And you're pretty open at an event like this to talking to strangers. But Twitter is just like this. Everyone there is open to having conversations with strangers, if you can strike up an interesting conversation. And that's what's just so amazing to me about it, is that you can make these random connections. Anyway.
Yeah, so does anyone think there's anything specific about building that audience that's different in legal that wasn't already covered by the 3 don'ts? Okay. So, Jen, did you want to comment whether, Davis Wright Tremaine, you spend a lot of money on advertising on social media, or?
We've been exploring it. It's not something that we are, fully committed to, but around recruiting, it's been helpful for us. So when we, not specific like, hey, we're looking to hire this person, but when we're talking about our firm's culture and putting that out there, it's been helpful. And then when we have events, when we do a lot of events, that has been very helpful when we've purchased social media, or just amp it up, right? Not to go by followers.
So that's more to build your events and build your audience than actually buying advertising to sell lots.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick wrap up. Everyone's going to give one quick best practice or tip, and then we're going to have questions. So whoever has the mic.
So I'll just give one tip for the consumer attorneys, the consumer-facing attorneys. Do social media remarketing. It's probably the cheapest form of paid advertising with the highest conversion rates. We've tested this out over 70 firms or so, and have really kind of validated that.
Can you explain, what did you mean by that?
What is that?
So you on Facebook and Twitter specifically, you could set up an ads manager account and set up a remarketing program. So you essentially create what's called a custom audience. You basically drop a tracking pixel onto your blog, your website. People that are visiting your website already demonstrate some kind of intent, right? Like, they're interested in you for one reason or another, but again, maybe they're not ready to buy. And so they go off to Facebook or Twitter, and now they see your banner ads, right? Yeah, just make sure they're not cheesy, they're just call Saul, make sure that they're consistent with your brand, that sort of thing. But oftentimes you're being compared with competitors. And if they're constantly seeing you top of mind when they're ready to purchase, they're going to click on that ad and call you.
Surprised it took us almost an hour for someone to say, just call Saul.
I already got it on Twitter.
Yeah,
just
call Saul.
Okay, whoever.
I just think it's being authentic. We've already touched on that, but find your voice, be consistent with it, and then try and engage with others that have a similar voice.
All right, so best advice. I think that when I talk to lawyers about social media, a lot of them think of social media as this place that they can go and find like some magical person out there that will hire them, and suddenly they'll be this amazing like match, and they'll just bring in a whole bunch of business. And what I've seen is far more effective is for lawyers to create a list, and they can build this list using social media, but of their top 20 relationships, and work those 20 relationships using social media and using all the tools that are out there. Because it's those people that you know that you really cultivate deeper relationships with. That's where you're going to bring in business, not from the random people that see one tweet, but where you really get to build deeper relationships. And so if you don't have that high level top list, then you know, the random tweets aren't really going to get you anywhere. So I guess that's my best tip.
Okay, I started simply and I will end simply. So anybody who's heard me speak knows what I'm going to say. Dan knows what I'm going to say. Get a really good freaking headshot. So if you're going to spend time doing this, the internet now, you've probably noticed, has become very visual. So websites now are huge images. People expect pictures. Facebook posts are all pictures now. So you have to think about things visually. And when I go around and speak, it's kind of my favorite party trick. Before I speak, I will go onto Avvo, and it takes me about 15 minutes to find 6 of the most painful headshots that you've ever seen. And it's not because of the people themselves, they're fabulous and gorgeous, it's because their headshot is disastrous. So spend the money, don't have your daughter or son take it with a Polaroid, but it's super, super important. And we have a study that we cite all the time about the physiological reaction to photographs, and it really, really does matter when you're trying to showcase yourself. So
That's a great one, because my favorite is when you go to somebody, and just on LinkedIn even, and they've got like, it's their wedding picture, and they've cut out their husband, or they've cut out their wife, and it's like, okay, what are you thinking? So that's a great tip. Okay, so let's do some questions for about 10 minutes. Anyone have any questions? Okay.
I think that one back there was first.
Yes.
All right, so I guess my question is about, I think a lot of the businesses that use Twitter a lot, I think we've talked about them, they do engage a lot with their consumers, with the people, with their network, I guess. And part of that is talking about their business and giving advice or giving information to their Twitter followers or their Facebook people. And I think as law firms and attorneys, people a lot of times do want some feedback, some about the law a lot of times, especially if you're marketing to consumers. And so is there a way that you guys can think of to walk that sort of fine line? And is it through blog posts? Like without doing some sort of unlicensed or forming like an attorney-client relationship, right? Like how do you provide meaningful information when people are searching for that from people they follow without crossing the line? And do you have tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that, you can educate your marketplace generally all you want. You can send them a list of, here's the 10 things you need to do in what order when you get a speeding ticket. You can give those specific instructions. You just can't give the specific instructions in response to a specific question, right? Because you can't apply the law to their specific facts, but you can absolutely teach people exactly what to do. There's no problem with that. I mean, so I always think about it as the perspective of, if you can create the questions, anticipate all the questions that your potential client is going to ask, when they do a Google search or when they look for that information, your answers are going to come up. So that's how I like to think about that.
We did a blog post on from our privacy and security group around like the first 5 things you need to do if you think you've been hacked, and that was a really popular one. And then we were able to go out to that was a blog post, and then we went out to other social media pieces and said, what are the first 5 things you do if you've been hacked? And so it was a shortened version. I think you can do it that way.
And sometimes you'll write an article, you'd be like, this is exactly what people want, and the article will just totally fall flat, and then you write something else you don't even think is going to resonate, and that gets a lot of traffic. So that's why you got to write a lot to find the right stuff that's going to hit.
And isn't there a way too that you you're able to create things that are like PDFs, and then you put them in your footers, and then that way, if it's the top 5 tips or whatever, it'll actually put you further up on Google. I'm way outside my area of expertise, but
Yeah.
somebody is
I would say, so PDFs oftentimes aren't indexed, right, like from an
Yeah.
SEO perspective, so I'd probably put it in a text blog post rather than a PDF. And again, like, listen to your audience, right? So I'm just kind of commenting on what they've already said. Listen to your audience, see what the questions are, and then say, you know, a simple tweet is, I often get asked this question, here's the facts, right, around this. And so you're kind of addressing those specific people without addressing them specifically.
Yeah. And I think Miguel
Miguel might have had a question.
Oh yeah, Miguel
Before
was
Adam.
next, then we'll go back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How effective are some
okay.
of the social media analytics programs simply measured for like a startup's growth or for a company's growth?
I would say any analytics, whether it's social media or otherwise, is only as effective as the person that's doing the analysis, right? So, like, it's just spitting out data, and you have to kind of know what data is important, what's relevant to your audience, right? So with social media, it's level of engagement, right? Like, it's how many shares certain content pieces get, right? And so you kind of look at this over time, and you can say, well, you know, these pieces of content were duds. These got a lot of reshares. Let me do more of that, right? So you're letting the analytics kind of lead you towards your desired business outcome. That's a simplified version of you know.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, you can measure traffic of content that you share, right? But not all content is created equally. So, you know, Kevin O'Keefe wrote an article about how firms need to make sharing like a team sport, or something about how they need to get everybody involved in sharing. And so I reshared his article, and it got a lot of traffic. The next week, I reshared another article that was Star Wars finally got a title. That got like 20 times the traffic as Kevin O'Keefe's article, but the people clicking on the first article, those are the right people. Those are the people I wanted to cater to. And so, you know, it's the analytics that relate to the right stuff to the right people. And that, I think, clicks is actually a very valuable thing if you write very specific content that speaks to your audience. So I look at traffic numbers all the time. I think that's a powerful thing to look at. Yeah.
Speaking of traffic, I live in a very low traffic area of the law, so high-tech intellectual property is very much in the long tail. Abo had a great infographic on the top 50 questions that people ask. Intellectual property didn't even register.
It was 51. It was 51.
No, when I asked about it, it was around 100.
Okay.
That was at like 0.03% of all questions asked. And if you look at the analytics on how often people are searching for the services that my firm will provide, all of our services, I mean, they're in the Seattle geographic region, it's hundreds of Google searches a month.
Several. Right?
So we get great click-through on some of our paid search ads. We'll get 2 to 5% click-throughs, which are, you know, astronomically good because it's, you know, what people are looking for. How would you modify a social media strategy for a company that's living out the far end of the long tail?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about social media. I think that you know, Google, it's very difficult with Google because it's hard to really resonate, but with social media, you can find the tribe of people that are interested in that. So you can find, where do those people hang out? And you can find those kind of, so to speak, online events. And that's what having an ongoing blog where you're digging into that, you're building your own audience that is interested in those same types of things. I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you're reaching that relevant audience and it just happens to be low volume, I think that's fine. If you're not capturing more of that audience, then maybe you have some issues potentially with your funnel, right? So social media is just kind of like one part of the acquisition, but like you have this whole other funnel of engagement, right?
So Seattle is intentionally Luddite in one of its sort of playgrounds where my clients exist. There's a Seattle Tech Startups mailing list, and when they ask for a patent attorney, there'll be 10 referrals. 5 are for me and 5 are for 5 other patent attorneys.
That's a good ratio.
Yeah. I can live with that ratio, but
the workers' comp guy over here is like 100 referrals.
No, but it's you know, I can't help feeling, you know, that there are a lot of other patent attorneys in town. It's like, where are they getting their business? I mean, it's like, I can't help feeling that I could be doing better, but the hunting is so sparse, and there isn't another playground where the CTOs like hang out and shoot the breeze.
Well, and so one opportunity is for you to create the playground. You know, it's like people often saying, oh, should I create a LinkedIn group? No, don't create a LinkedIn group, right? There's a million LinkedIn groups. Create a monthly breakfast series and have a LinkedIn group around that breakfast series. Because the purpose of the group is for everyone to get together, for you to have one great speaker that's gonna be perfect for all these CTOs. And you're just throwing the party to get all these people together and find a great speaker for them. And you know, so that's how I think it could be more effective. You create the playground, you know. Anyway, I know that's not an easy thing to do, but that's I would recommend.
Does anyone else have any questions?
So if you're an organization that's consumer facing and you have a small budget, what do you think the most effective way to spend your budget is to promote your company? Is it through social media? Is it through advertisement? Like, how would you go about allocating them?
I mean, do you have people that are willing to write?
Let's assume not, just because generally speaking, lawyers, broadly speaking, don't really do much outward-facing writing.
Yeah. Okay. So besides writing.
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone else.
Thanks for tossing the hot potato. Pick up the hot potato. What's the problem?
Okay, so just broadly speaking, I work with nonprofit organizations doing all sorts of legal age stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a few of them that do writing, that's great. But like if I'm advising them saying like, if you have a little bit, if you have, you know, like $5,000, how should I say is the most effective way to spend that? Is it to get an intern to write some stuff? Is it to get some ads? Is it
So I would, just based on the little that I know about it, so I would try to focus on an organic strategy, right? So getting some interns to generate some content. When you do that though, make sure that the content is relevant again, right? Know your audience, create a demographic and a psychographic profile of who that person is, create an editorial calendar around that ideal audience, so that way you have a strategy, an SEO strategy around the kind of content you're gonna produce over the next quarter. Do it on a quarterly basis. Measure analytics against that content to make sure that it's relevant. The other thing I would do, if you did have some amount of paid budget for a nonprofit group, I'd probably just send them direct mail. Really, like it's kind of old school. I know it's not very like innovative, whatever, but direct mail still works if you do it right. Yeah.
Just wanted to comment on the direct mail. We have a law firm who did an offer with our software, and they did direct mail because when they mail things to their existing clients and it comes in the letter from your law firm, people open it. And we actually had an amazingly high rate of use. The other thing is there's services where you can get blogs written for you. We used one for a while, it's called BlogMutt. And so they would do the research. Like we told them, okay, we want stories on, as Adam knows, intellectual property. So we said we want horror stories, we want these things. So they went out and they found all this stuff and they wrote. And we didn't really like their writing style, but they were doing the blogs for us. It's super inexpensive. And then we would just add our own personal twist to it, and somebody else was doing the research. It's like $80 a month or something like that. It's super cheap. So
I was gonna say, the other thing you could do is you could also have, if you don't have people that are willing to write, you can create content in other ways. So you can go and interview some of the people that deal with the problems. So have YouTube interviews of people where instead of them having to create the content, they just have to answer your questions. I know someone's gonna have to do the work there, but there's different ways to create that content. Way in the back there?
So you've taken over.
Sorry.
Yes, one last question in the back because then we need to do the talk.
My friend Kevin Keith is sitting here, you know, what's gonna have him comment on your, you know, comment on, you know what I'm talking about, Joe? You were commenting about the keen insight that this young man had about his blog post about, you know,
I did give him an honorable mention already. So.
No. I mean, he knows some stuff.
No, but I mean, I think Adrian had the best point tonight, when I shared before, that it is not volume, it has nothing to do with volume. I tell people, you know, that start to blog, if you haven't made a list on your wall, just put a list on the wall of the 20 people that you want to get to know better, you know, influencers or prospective clients or clients, then you're starting to wrong, because that's what you want to do. Because
Thank you from the back. So thank you all for listening, and thank you to our panelists, and again to Avo and Dan for organizing this part of it. And now we're gonna hear, I think, I'm gonna let Dan introduce it.
We're gonna do thanks for getting the chairs, guys. We're gonna do the Darwin talk now, which is, you're probably better at describing this than I am, Barry. But I think the Darwin talk is like a hybrid Ignite. I mean, you should probably describe. I'll get it set up. Why are you giving it to me?
So Evolve Law has a Darwin theme, and so we came up with the idea of Darwin Talks. The notion behind it is to be a little bit provocative. So for example, in New York, we did a panel called Big Data in the Law. So we had 5 people come up and talk about big data, and then Jules, my co-founder, got up and talked about how there's no such thing as big data in the law, it's medium data. So the idea is that we do something that's a little bit in your face, and that kicks off our networking afterwards.
There you go, see? And the individual giving our Darwin talk tonight is a law student, and I just keep singing his praises, so I hope I don't embarrass him too much, but like, you want to talk about like online, offline. Miguel has just totally inserted himself into the legal technology community in this city, and is now organizing a social justice hackathon, which to my knowledge is probably the first. I know it's the first in Seattle, and one of the first in the country, and he's a 2L. So that's just awesome in and of itself. So he's going to come out and tell you why you should come to the hackathon, I think, and everything he's going to do with it. So turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. How you guys doing this evening?
Good.
Good. That was a great presentation on social media. My name is Miguel Willis, second year law student at Seattle University School of Law. I'm also the organizer of the Social Justice Hackathon, which I'll tell you more about after the presentation. Tonight's talk is titled Tech's Peculiar Relationship with Legal Access. Let's give a little intro about just technology in the legal industry in general. I mean, we all know it, we all see it. Technology has revolutionized and spurred the catalyst for innovation for the legal industry. Over $254 million were invested in legal tech startups and companies in 2014. There are legal hackers meetup groups, like the one that co-organized this event. There are legal hackathons, and there's almost over 1,000 legal startups and companies, according to AngelList. There's a big legal tech ecosystem in place. And a lot of the players in the ecosystem in Seattle are here tonight. It's clearly evident that we're at the headquarters of a legal marketing company for a social media for lawyers event. That says it all. The span of legal technology. And legal technology has innovated almost every aspect of the legal industry in terms of delivery of services, marketplace, document production, social media, marketing, Avo, blogs, Kevin O'Keefe. So what about access? What about technology and access? I mean, one would assume that if technology's hand was able to innovate and change almost every aspect of the legal industry, would technology increase legal access to individuals? Well, if you do a quick Google search of technology access, well, these happy articles will definitely come up. Meet the startups that are giving everyone affordable access to justice. The startups that give access to justice are already here. And will computers become better lawyers? So we can see that is not painting the most accurate picture of what's happening on the ground. We all know these numbers. 80% of the poor 2/3 of the middle class legal needs are going unmet. 50% of eligible individuals that are able to get legal assistance are being turned away because of capacity. Just last week, my good friend, Greg McLaughlin, tagged me in this article on Twitter about the civil legal needs study that just came out last Thursday that says in the last 10 years, Washington's civil legal needs have tripled. So what happened? Why aren't we able to solve this bottleneck problem of access to individuals when we have this technology around? Just for a little historical context, 2008, 2009, the same time when the legal industry spurred, during the recession and during the housing crisis, that time was the time when the legal industry had to improve, had to innovate because of the pressure to drive down costs, because of the cut in jobs. And during that same time, a lot of poor and middle class individuals, their legal needs exacerbated because of the subprime mortgage crisis and because of the recession as well. So you have an industry that's vastly innovating and a large group of individuals who has more legal problems than ever. So who are the providers of tech access? The main providers are the Legal Services Corporation. This is a quasi-governmental agency that provides grants to legal service aid providers across the country. One of their big grants is the Technology Innovative Grants. And they, in the last 15 years, awarded $46 million to 570 projects, $4 million this year, and the Pro Bono Innovation Fund, which has only been around for 2 years, but has awarded, $7 million. So you can already see the disparity in funds for just legal access, for tech legal access, and the legal industry as a whole is very disproportionate. And here's the implementation. So tech is integrated into legal access through online portals, document assembly, and mobile. One of the big things they have, you can go on a legal portal almost in every state, and you can search for law services, search for information about the law. This is supposed to be a self-help tool or a resource that you can find legal services. So what is technology's legal access problem? First, there's a lot of assumptions. Technology is not a solution, but only a part of a solution. And how they implement it with legal portals, they assume that every user's legal needs and every user are the same people. And let me explain what that means. That means if I wanted legal representation, I probably don't need a self-help website. And so how do you get me to that representation quicker? A lot of the tech products that are created right now aren't user-centered. They're not designed for a targeted user. When you talk about 80% of the poor, when you talk about the middle class, they probably don't have the highest education. So there's probably a digital divide, or there probably is the technology currently in place is probably not as accessible as one may think. And what are the barriers? I mean, we all work, most of us in here are lawyers, so we use legalese. This information, these words aren't easily accessible to a lay user or a layman. And again, we do have that digital divide. So 80% of the poor's legal needs aren't being met? Well, 20 million Americans don't have access to internet or don't have that easy accessible internet in their homes. And bad business processes and analysis. So with all legal tech companies, they go through this very iterative process of continuing innovation, continuing, making their products better for their customers. A very solid approach to kind of building better products for your user. Well, the legal service aid companies, they only get these grants to build these sites, to build these products, but there's not a lot of changes to these models that kind of focus directly on the user. Therefore, and there's not a lot of empirical studies to show how effective a lot of these self-portals are. There's very few empirical studies to show how effective they are. So what's the solution? Again, I said tech is only a portion of the solution to solve the access problem. We need to design great products for a segment of the population that may not know how to effectively run a Google search like you or I may, that may not know how to go on Washington Help, the portal site, and look for the specific type of law that they're trying to find and the necessary resources. So making that design optimal for the user, so they'll want to use this, and they'll know if they have a legal problem or if they can find a solution to get it. And just making the law more simple, creating content that doesn't is not convoluting and doesn't confuse a user. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to do to better serve individuals is find out where the user is on his legal journey. I think that's the starting point. Is that, does an individual need full representation? Well, probably yeah, in a complex matter. But for most routine matters, they can probably be self-helped. Or if an individual needs a push, he can probably go to a pro se clinic and have an individual help him learn how to help himself. Or he can possibly go to a legal clinic and get the assistance that he needs at a law school. So it's kind of first finding out where that user's legal journey, where they are in that path, and then kind of triaging to that specific area so they can better help themselves instead of everyone running to the legal clinic and being told they have to leave because there's just too much demand and not enough supply. So how do we make this? How do we make this happen so where we can get tech to work and actually expand access? Well, we can model it after what we have with like the legal, just like the legal tech industry, where there's a big ecosystem. So in the legal industry, you have your legal meetups groups, you have your hackers, you have your businesses, you have a lot of individuals serving a lot of different needs. We need to have a very coordinated effort to solve the access problem. That starts with law schools and legal education. There's several very innovative programs across the country. Codex out of Stanford, they do almost like an accelerator type of thing where they're kind of maturing companies to solve this problem using tech, using innovation. KJET is out of, I want to say Chicago, Kent. Law Without Walls in Miami. Just very innovative programs that taking different approaches to solve the problem, I think will be necessary starting at the law school level. And just a lot of collaboration with legal education, the legal aid organizations in the city, with innovative projects. Legal tech companies, yes, you do have a stake in this as well. I think while creating the most optimal user that knows how to, use services, find legal aid, will eventually create more customers for you on the back end. And then, working with federal and local governments, what Mike Zuckerberg did was create what we have. The organization's name is basically a tech advocacy clinic, where they advocate for tech workers' rights, to promote innovation and promote comprehensive immigration reform. Why can't the tech, legal tech companies promote access issues to Congress to raise these funds, to get more money to tech programs or innovative programs that will work and actually solve these problems? Private attorneys as well. When you talk about, giving your pro bono hours, of course you all want to do it more effectively. So how can we do it as effective as possible? Is getting the right pro bono attorneys, or getting the right attorneys to serve the right people's needs. So having, innovative things in the works, so where we can get people to the right person to solve their needs. Legal tech advocacy, I just said that. But it really takes all of these actors on this list working in cohesion, working together, and just a very serious and collaborated approach to solving this issue. So why act now? I think it's clearly evident from the study that was just published last week. If we don't act now, this gap will only increase. You have a chance to do something really great here. And I mean really great. Help those in need with legal services, or help those help themselves by providing the correct information or directing them to the right process to help their legal problem. And again, it will complement the legal tech industry's growth, and use technology to its ultimate potential. There's a lot of things I didn't say, which is like, things against the bar, UPL, unbundled services, a lot of these buzzwords things. But again, those are other fights. I think we do have technology here, and we need to make it work. I think it's almost very inefficient to have this money going towards technology if the users aren't going to use that technology, or it's not going to, or we can't even have a comprehensible way of seeing if this thing works for people. So it's to our best benefit that we make it work. And thank you. That is my topic. So if you guys have any questions. Okay, no questions? Okay, one question right here.
So one question, you mentioned the federal government, and I think the idea of getting them involved is a really good idea because they have the ability to kind of streamline services people. I'm curious though, have you thought about just how to handle the reticence that the government deals with? Like I've worked for state governments and federal governments that still use WordPerfect. So when it comes to technology, they're really struggling to get up there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you take that model, what's going on?
You got a big voice.
I can still hear you.
Okay, so if you take that model and look at something like Startup Seattle. Startup Seattle is it's a website, it's a portal for people that want to start a startup or tech startup. This thing, you go on the site, very user-friendly. I can find out all the information that I need. There's a heat map, for God's sakes, of every startup event that's happening tonight. This is, I don't have to have any knowledge coming into it, and it directs me to where I need to go within the startup community. Why can't there be a tool like that with law? And in terms of, I can find out what I need, I get the information that I need, and I'm readily able to act on it. Instead of going to a legal portal where there's just a bunch of words, and it's very, very hard to navigate. I think it's Seattle, the city of Seattle runs that site. So I mean, we have the capability necessary to solve this problem. It's just putting the right people in place with the right type of solutions. That answers the question.
Yeah, I think just to echo that point is, I think one of the main impediments is just the infrastructure on the capability of government to interact with you in a technological way. So, for example, if I go to TurboTax and kind of go to file my taxes, that's a relatively seamless experience because IRS is set up. But we're living in an age where there are courts that are not online. I deal with legal research and I send runners to go make copies of documents because the court itself can't even get 1990s technology of scanning document and putting it online. So the idea of actually interacting in a meaningful way with people, I think is just hampered by it. And there's so many, every court kind of decides what its own technological infrastructure is going to look like. So your municipal, state, appellate, federal courts are all on different systems.
Yeah, definitely. We do have those jurisdictional divides. And, just like with the technology innovative grants, not everyone has received them. So we're still young on this. The innovative grants are only 2 years old, but I think a very collaborative approach, both private and public, is a way. I feel like there's, just big pushback from the traditional legalists of tech and, the legal tech industry. These people will come and take advantage of individuals. They'll kind of just throw all their marketing at them and just take their money. Where, if the legal tech industry, shows more care to this problem, I think that could be a solution, working with schools, providing internships to people, or money to individuals that want to solve these problems, I think is probably a good way or innovative approach.
First, I don't think that just because the courts are slower doesn't mean these people in disadvantaged communities should not have access. But do these people who want help, is there a portal for them to go and access that, and then everyone in the community can go there, or to help in this legal action of pro bono, or?
Yeah, so the portal is called Washington Law Help Now, and I checked out the website today. I was going to just put it up and show you the kind of differences, but it's it's very wordy. It kind of basically goes to the substance of the law. Like if you need a housing or you need something involving a criminal, it has all these different sections, so you can go to that as a starting point. But I don't even, as a user, from a user experience, how do you even know where I'm at? What if I just want, what if, something just happened? Who can I call? Who can I, so it's kind of increasing that user experience from a user-centered experience to make the product most optimal and help more people. Because if we're able to triage individuals better, we're able to kind of decrease the amount of people that are going face-to-face in legal clinics, and they're able to help more people that need the help. And the people that actually need face-to-face representation are able to get that face-to-face, and the people that can be self-helped will be self-helped. Okay, that's probably it. But before I'm done, I'll have my co-organizer, Daniel Sandoval, come up, and we would like to share an event that we are hosting that kind of goes